Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the March 1st, 2021 workshop. Before we begin the work of the district, let us stand for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do we have any public input? Yeah. Nope. Okay. Mrs. Randall, you're on your way.
Board members, superintendent, thank you so much for the opportunity to come today and talk about land, one of my three favorite subjects.
Make sure that everyone can hear you.
Can you hear me?
No, they're coming up.
He's coming up.
Okay.
Okay.
Can you do a testing?
Can you hear me now?
You just want to speak up.
I feel like I'm on Zoom.
Unmute.
Okay. Is everybody, can you hear me now?
Yep.
All righty. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, since that's the easiest way to do it. So the last time we talked about land was in July of 2019. So about 18 months ago, this is the last time I provided this document to you. So I've provided you with an updated copy. There's not a lot of changes. I updated, in November, I think, of 2019, we went ahead and approved a group of resolutions that declare some of those vacant properties in the Northwest, the Lady Lake Fruitland Park area, for sale. So I updated that. We also have contracts on the Camphor Road property and on the Leesburg High Ag Farm on County Road 466A. And just to let you know, we are working on an April 15th closing date for that property. So after all those amendments, we are almost done. Keep your fingers crossed that everything continues to go smoothly. And on the Camphor Road property, we should be closing in the next couple of months. That had a much shorter closing period. So those are just the updates on the vacant land in total. There were a couple of specific items that we wanted to talk to you about today. One of those is Claremont Elementary School. So as you know, when the Aurelia Cole Academy opens in 2023, Claremont Elementary School, those students will move over to the Aurelia Cole Academy, and that facility will become vacant at that point. So, there's been a lot of discussions about what to do with that property. We actually own 3 different parcels there. One is the location where Care Here and the Title I offices are located. We don't have any proposals to do anything there. Those offices are still necessary. Another is the 5 acres where the city has a park, McKinney Park, and we leased that to them about 23 years ago, and that 25-year lease is actually coming up. So we'll deal with that in the next couple of years. But then the remainder is Claremont Elementary School. And I really am probably going to turn that over to Ms. Cornegate and Mr. Dodd. They've been dealing with a group that is interested in it, and I think they have some proposals they'd like to talk about.
Would you like to take it?
Sure.
All right.
You're looking my direction. Yes. So when folks living in that area got word that we had some intentions of relocating those students and vacating that lot, naturally there was a bit of concern, thinking, we've seen what's happened with some of the other properties that the school district has vacated over time, and last thing we want is this strip mall in the middle of our neighborhood, or is the property going to sit there and just run down over a series of years, and what's that going to do for our neighborhood? And so they came to me, and I said, certainly we want to be good neighbors. We value you all as members of the community, and so I said, we're open to suggestions of what to do with that. Certainly, I've heard just in my time on the board many different ideas of what we could do with that property, and I think what we're kind of landing on is captures some of those things that I've heard over time. But this group really had some strong ambitions that they'd love to see some sort of community center and an opportunity for this project, for this property to continue to be a beacon of education, if you will, that we know that there are probably greater needs for post-secondary and technical education, particularly down the south end, as it's quite a bit of a drive from there to Lake Tech. And so that was one possibility we looked at as ways to use that property for continued educational purposes. And so this group is very serious. I thought initially that, okay, once they understand how much work really goes into this, they're going to go, oh, it's probably beyond our abilities, but there is no shortage of support, I think, for these folks, and no shortage of ambition either. So with that, they just continue to meet and talk with us and express continued interest time and time again that they really want to see something that really benefits the community there, and also, once again, has that educational component to it. Superintendent and I have talked back and forth with them, and we've drafted a draft of a MOU that would ultimately lead to a leasing agreement, but there are some benchmarks there. And is there a copy of that draft in the packet here?
It
Yes.
is. It's on the third page, right after
I see it.
It's on the back side of the second page.
Yeah. So you'll, I guess, just to give you a couple of quick highlights of that, I do mention that there are some benchmarks here that we're looking for this group to achieve in terms of what sort of funding they have to acquire in order to be operational, because we don't have the operational dollars to subsidize a community center. And this is a pretty significant, important piece of property that we also recognize has some maintenance challenges that go along with it. I mean, it's number one on our sales tax list of buildings to replace. So there's quite a lot of work that would need to be done to it renovation-wise. And so this MOU also seeks to have the group commit to what those sorts of renovations they'd be able to take on, and that we would approve those. And I think the most significant piece of that is that, so what's the result? So the result is that we would ultimately, if they were able to achieve these sorts of benchmarks, then we could enter into a lease agreement. Our MOU says up to 25 years, but in reality I think we left it vague there because there are so many different options and possibilities with that. On one hand, you don't want to go too short of a period, because that, I think, doesn't give them the stability they need to go out and get funding from various backers. They're looking at the city of Claremont as well as Lake County as funding sources, various grant opportunities, recruiting Lake Tech as an anchor for this site. And if you give them a 3 or 5 year lease, I think you struggle to invest in renovations for that. Flip side, 25 years is a very long time, so maybe you land somewhere in between. I think initially, while this group is getting off the ground, I would advocate that we make the lease some sort of token agreement, whether it's $1 or something of the sort. Perhaps after some bit of time, then you maybe reevaluate and say, okay, now can you look at maybe a market value for that property, and that'll give you some time to see, I guess, what sorts of benefits it provides to the community and provides for continued education in Lake County. Anticipate the group that probably makes that decision will be after us, but I think it was just important to lay a good foundation for this group to be able to get started and go out and start recruiting their backers. So, what do y'all think?
Well, I'll start. I think that the idea that we would use a piece of our real estate and invest it back in the community is outstanding. So I would favor this 100%. I gave some thoughts about the lease, and they're going to have to do these investments, so you'd want them to be able to get that back. And what I had in my mind, Mr. Dodd, was more of a 10-year at, could be as low as $1, because they're making that investment. And then the next 10 years would be at market value, and then maybe an additional 10. So that gives them 30 years for it to really take root in the community. And at each of those options would give them the option to buy, by the way. So I think that's important. If at some point they would actually own it.
Sure.
I know that you particularly and the superintendent have done a lot of hard work on this, and I 100% support those efforts.
Thank you. I think the group would be excited to hear that.
Well,
I'll just second that. I appreciate the fact that they're not even coming to us to look for funds, even to build a building or to renovate a building, and so I agree.
I like the idea. I do have a question.
Yeah.
Do we have a monitoring device at this point to see how they're coming along with at least people committed to investing? Because this is a lot of money.
It is, and I think that's where we've started with this MOU that would lead to a lease agreement. So if they are able to achieve these benchmarks of the funding and the renovation plan and acquire those backings, then we would negotiate the lease with them. Because you're right, there are some this is a big job, and it may not be easy to get the required backing. And the good news is that I think we would know that pretty much when the school is closing or shortly after, and then we could repurpose.
So basically, we're waiting until the school closes, and then at that point, they'll give us a report on where they are financially.
Well,
And if they're at the point that we've earmarked they need to be, then the property would be leased to them?
Well, here, so they don't have to have 100% right away.
Yeah,
But they have to be upright. So there's some sort of tracking. So if they're supposed to be at 75%, they're saying, oh, we're only at 25. Then I think that gives us an idea right then that, okay, this lease is ultimately not going to come to be, and that we're going to then pursue other options. And now this is not for the entire piece of property. Superintendent, I think you had a portion that you wanted to talk about.
Correct. So there's a newer building there that was not part of the buildings to be demolished from the Castaldi report. Is one that I've mentioned to them that we would like to retain. We are in desperate need of an early learning site at the south end of the county. This is a perfect location for that, and it fits in with the theme of the learning center. So we definitely want to retain that property for district use, which they are open to as well. So they would be taking the buildings that are in need of much renovation. And the reason why, just for clarification, why they need the MOU is because at this point, they have not been able to get any financial commitments because they need something in writing saying that there is a long-term commitment on our part in order for them to apply for grants and other things. So this is going to give them that, I think it's an 18-month period or so, to be able to secure some of those initial funds. So, and they meet regularly. I meet with them, Mr. Dodd's met with them, and we'll continue to monitor their progress as they are continuing right now with the architectural design of what they want and getting commitments from Lake Tech. And so they're a very active group, and every time we meet with them, there's more and more partners, I've noticed. The group has grown tremendously, and so there's a lot of support. I did get an email from the county manager last week saying that the county would be sending over a letter of support of the project as well, and I know that the city of Claremont is invested as well. So, it is quite a partnership.
I love the inclusion of Lake Tech in Claremont. We've heard that time and again, that it's just not convenient for that side of the county. So just the opportunity to work with citizens that live in that area too, and that we're respecting what their wishes are with their property and the property that surrounds them, that's significant. When it doesn't go your way, it's not a good thing. So I can speak from personal experience that it's really nice to see a body that's working with its citizens that are taxpayers. So, but the idea of Lake Tech is really encouraging.
One thing I was curious about, because it says, and I agree with no commercial enterprises, but something that is in some parts of the country, some parts of Orlando, I think has, what about like an incubator, like a business? So in a lot of places, you can rent, say for example, you have a commercial, you wanna start a commercial operation selling pasta sauce, okay? So like, you need a commercial kitchen. And so if they have a commercial kitchen, you can like rent out a space and then you can jar up your sauce and sell it at the like farmer's market, for example. But there's all sorts of incubators, all the way from cooking to scientific incubators. And that's something that I don't know if the South Lake community has or has a desire for, but this might fit in with that model that they're trying to create. Because it is sort of like the next step with education, at least in what I've
I
seen.
think this ultimately doesn't limit any of those kind of pie-in-the-sky ideas and what could possibly go in tandem with a career technical program. You know, we certainly have tech programs that produce a product. I think this just says that we're gonna come back and give them written consent to do so, so.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
so we can always give permission.
It's not prohibited, it
Right,
just says
that's
the
right.
district has to approve it.
Okay,
That's right.
that's great.
I love this investment, like not a little bit. So, well done.
And I'm pretty excited to see what this.
From the photographs in the Gastaldi report, that the buildings were gonna be demoed, but that's because they don't meet school standards, right? Because I don't see any pictures where they look awful.
Right, they do not. I mean, we've done a relatively good job of maintaining them, but for educational purposes for a K-12 school,
Right.
except for building 18, basically, they've outlived their life cycle. But that doesn't mean that the buildings aren't solidly built and could be repurposed. That's-
Back when we did Dabney, the roofs were caving in and everything else, so it was,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right, and the fact that this will have been occupied up until that transition really makes a difference. Dabney was, unoccupied for 5 or 6 or more years,
Right.
so that makes a
18
big
was the new
difference.
building that was to the right of the gym, like if you're looking at the schools on that side.
Right, right, it's
And
the,
that's what
it's the one with the blue roof, if you're
Yeah.
looking at the aerial. So,
Just making sure.
yeah,
Very good.
So
Okay.
Mr. Johnson actually drafted the MOU for us, and Elizabeth's taken some notes. There are some amendments that she wants to add based on the conversation that we just had. We have also shared the draft with the Lincoln Park Alliance Group, so I know that they're reviewing and we'll bring back, I'm sure, maybe some of their thoughts as well. So we'll keep you updated on where we are with that and give you the revised version once we get it.
all right. So the other thing that we had, a specific item today, was the property that, in my head, I still call the Lowndes property, because that's who we bought it from, but it is located on Scrub J Lane and Sullivan Road in Mineola. It is approximately 112 acres. We've had some discussion about this property before, but I think it's kind of come to the point where we need to have a more in-depth conversation. The Florida Department of Transportation, as part of a turnpike widening project, is going to replace the bridge over the turnpike at that location. In order to reorient the bridge, they have asked us, I'm gonna go to the map if we can. They have asked us to provide right-of-way. They're actually going through the preliminary eminent domain process, but of course, as a government partner, we try to work with them as much as possible. So, so basically, if you look, our property is on the northwest. Can you see? Oh, you can. All right, good. The property is kind of on the, sorry, it's actually on the southwest side of the turnpike. This map is kind of turned around, but basically it's here. And the area that the turnpike has requested from us is essentially this yellow area here. It's 2.5 acres, a little bit more, and they have valued it at about $108,000 an acre, a total of $285,000. However, we have had some discussions with them and the public works staff for the county about the need for a pedestrian bridge to be included as part of that project. And in return for the donation of the property, if the board agrees to that, then DOT would go ahead and build the pedestrian bridge across there. It's a multi-use trail. And eventually, they would build that as part of the bridge project, and that would end up saving the county money in the long run, because eventually the county would end up building that bridge. And so my recommendation to the board, there's two options. You can accept the cash offer from the DOT, or you can agree to donate the property in return for construction of that pedestrian bridge. In the long term, I think that that the pedestrian bridge will help us, as well as the county, because basically if we build a school on this site, it expands the walkability area of that school, saves us money in busing, and basically just kind of helps the whole county. Right now, there's no houses north of the turnpike, but there will be. So, you know, that will eventually, I think, pay off for us. So that's, my recommendation would be to go ahead and accept the swap for the pedestrian bridge for the right-of-way.
Where's
So-
the numbers? Which numbers are for the pedestrian bridge?
Right, so there's no, I don't have an official cost estimate on the pedestrian bridge, but what I have heard from people who know more about the cost of construction than I do is it's worth about $750,000. That's how much it would cost DOT to go ahead and construct it. If at some point since they're doing it as part of that project, if they didn't do it now and the county did it later, it would cost the county even more money, because they would have to restart that project. There's a whole cost of implementation. So, so that's the estimate that I have. It's kind of a rough estimate.
I just want to make sure I understood, it costs $750,000 to build the pedestrian bridge, but we're going to donate $7.2 million in property?
No, it's only,
Okay.
it's 2.5 acres.
Okay, of the
So
property.
it's of the property.
Got it.
So basically, DOT
Thank you.
has
I missed
valued that.
section. I'm like, what?
Yeah, so,
Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
was very confused. That
Leave
makes-
us with like 109 acres still.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay,
And,
I could breathe again, thank you.
right. So DOT has valued that 2.5 acres at about $285,000.
That sounds better.
So
Oh, so this is actually a good deal.
I
I was
believe
trying
it's
to
a good deal.
understand.
I didn't understand at all. I was like, how is this even making sense right now?
I was like, why are we paying for a pedestrian bridge? Okay,
Nope,
I get it.
just 2.5 acres of it, valued at 285 roughly, and they would build a bridge worth about 750.
Okay, I'm on board, thanks.
Okay. Okay, so are there any questions on that? I just
We
wanted to
still
make
keep
sure.
the majority of the property, right? Like Mark?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
It leaves us with 109 acres roughly.
Which is plenty for even a high school, correct? Yeah?
Yes,
You're not going to high school.
right. So that's not the
Maybe
only
eventually.
request for that property.
Right around the corner from
It's a
is it?
very, very desirable property, let's tell you that. So the the city of Mineola, and on the right-of-way, eventually we would be requested to go ahead and donate strips of right-of-way along both the west side of Scrub J Lane and the north side of Sullivan Road. So that's basically just to widen those roads, make them to standard, and improve the access along there. So that's not an immediate request, but just so that you keep that in mind, that eventually, they're gonna ask for land along there. The city of Mineola would like to expand their water treatment plant, which is directly to the east of our property. It's on the other side of Scrub J Lane. They have requested anywhere from 10 to 25 acres of that property, of our property, in order to build what's called rapid infiltration basins, basically. They're the sand areas where they basically eject water, it goes into the aquifer quicker. And they have a need for more of those to treat their water coming out of that plant. So they have requested land from us. We have, if you see the area that they've requested, basically it's, oh, sorry, I'm not sure what's going on there. Did I get kicked off of Zoom?
I don't know. It was working a second ago.
You certainly did then.
Okay.
You're still on from my end, Kelly.
Oh, okay.
The screen is
Your share screen.
And you're muted. I don't know if that's gonna.
Kelly, is what you're talking about now anywhere in the packet?
Yes.
Okay.
Let me get that. All right. It's about page 12. It's basically this map. I do not have, this is,
There it is. I found it. I was way past it.
I have a couple
go
questions
back
on
down
this. Does this smell? Like, I grew up next to a water treatment plant, and it's, when the wind's blowing the wrong way, it's unpleasant.
I have not been to the city's water treatment plant, so I don't really know.
I mean,
I've
if
been
they're
by the one in
spraying
Claremont by
this,
Windy Hill Middle School, and on a windy day, it does.
like,
Smell
what,
great.
if they're spraying on all this land, won't that, I mean, they're spraying not clean water, right?
It's been treated, right?
It's been treated, and there's high standards for the treatment. That doesn't mean that it couldn't smell on a bad day.
I don't know, will that reduce the value of the rest of the land? And also, why are they choosing the frontage?
Well, so that's part of the discussion that we would have with them, is that, the location of that land. So as you can see from this particular map, it slopes down pretty strongly down to a lower area that actually goes into a lake, a wetland. And so, staff's proposal, this is the less usable part of the land. Our proposal would be that if we're going to consider doing some kind of a deal with them, that we would, negotiate this part of the property. However, that may not work for their purposes because they do need a certain type of soil and a certain type of drainage in order for the ribs to work. So that would be part of the negotiation with them. And I will tell you, this kind of plays into the other request for the property, is that we received an unsolicited offer for it from a developer who actually owns a lot of property in this area, Ridgeland. And they have offered us $95,000 an acre for the remaining portion of the property after, let's say, 12 acres, basically, because I think that's really where the city is willing to settle. They said 90 to 25, we said 10. I think they'd kind of like to get about 12. And I would recommend that we keep at least 35 acres for a school site in this area. There's no point in giving up that site and then only to have to go buy another site. And so Richland has basically made us an offer of $95,000 an acre for the remainder. And for discussion's sake, let's just say it turns out to be about 60 acres. It would be pending annexation and rezoning into the city of Mineola. And right now, the city of Mineola has a resolution in place that says, and I'm going to paraphrase their resolution, so hopefully I don't get it wrong, but basically says that their preference is not to annex and rezone property unless there are extraordinary circumstances. I have had limited conversations on this offer and this property, but my expectation would be that I think it is the city's intention and the developer's intention that we would donate a water treatment plant site, the 12 acres and that would be the city's consideration that it's an extraordinary condition, and they would move forward with the annexation and the rezoning
For the other person?
for the developer and for our site. Basically, it would be the whole property. We would develop a land use plan that has some residential for them, their 60 acres, and institutional for us at our 35 acres, and then whatever I assume the city would want their water treatment rib site to be institutional. And so it would basically lay out where those sites were gonna be and how that would move forward.
Can I add a little bit to this, since I've been knee-deep in it?
Please do.
Yeah. Originally, when they came to us, they sent a letter, this Ridgeland, for $65,000 an
Yes, sir.
acre. That obviously, for them to be part of the city of Claremont and then have the utilities upgraded to serve that.
Mineola.
Mineola, what did I say, Claremont? Mineola, I'm sorry. That increased the value. And so, but they have, the city of Claremont has this moratorium on new residential. And so the whole,
I'm gonna say it's not a
well,
moratorium.
not a moratorium, it's
Right,
what she
it's
said.
a resolution of
It's a resolution that
expressing
annexes the
their
property.
position.
So, tomato. Anyway. So increasing the value with that understanding that it would be allowed into the city and not have this 2-year period, increase the value. Hence, that's the new $95,000 versus 65 or 60, whatever it was. And that seemed very reasonable to me. And I know that Mineola has gone along with the 25 acres. Just so everyone's straight, I've always talked 10. So that's what that would be, for that consideration, would be worth.
So Bill, just what I think I heard you say is that that would increase the value of the 60 acres that we would potentially consider selling by the $30,000. So if you do that math, 60 acres times 30,000, it would cover the donation of the property for the water treatment
Correct.
facility? Okay.
Actually, we make it.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
The original things that we discussed, that you discussed in the beginning, involving the pedestrian bridge and all of that, that part does not affect what we're talking about right now. That would still happen?
Yes, that would be a different item. Basically,
Okay.
you'd move forward with
But on
that.
the same,
and-
all these things would be happening to the same piece of property?
But all on the same piece of property, yes.
Guess when you got 115 acres, a lot of people have their eyes on it, huh?
Well, and it's a growing, developing area. I mean, so,
Should it be marketed? Like, I mean, should we bid it or not bid it? Should we put it up for sale if we're
That's
offering
what
it to?
This kind of does, because we need to first say that we want to sell it. And then, if someone else wanted to make an offer, then certainly, because now it's for sale. Right now, it's not for
Okay,
sale.
so then it would go on the market.
And
That's
you
correct.
all had this appraised like last month.
we did, in response to this.
And their offer is commensurate with the appraisal?
So we had an appraisal done, and it was valued at $65,000 an acre. Now, in my conversations with the appraiser, he said, in his opinion, it's a little bit early, that the value will go up. But, it's fair today. Now, DOT also had an appraisal done, and theirs came in much higher. I mean, I think theirs may have been, really in the end run, ours may be a little bit low, theirs may be a little bit high,
What was theirs?
honestly. Theirs was $108,000 an acre. So, it's
And certainly, it's a game changer, the fact that they're going to be in the city of Mineola. That's incumbent on us to do, by the way, is to make that happen since we own the property. And then hence, that's where the value jumps to 95.
I guess the question is it's the right time to sell, right? And that's just always a hard call.
I think that as we go through these properties, that certainly like we held on to 466 until it reached that point. I think we're at that point with this piece of property.
So thinking about this piece of property, it's so large. The only reason to have property that large would be a high school, but there's one basically around the corner, right?
right.
So you're not going to build another high school here.
Right.
Or the other 2 schools on the site, an elementary and a middle.
Oh,
Do
a
we see it
K-8?
for that? Or, but, so the K-8 is 1 school, and you don't need 115 acres for that either, so.
That's where we're hitting this 30. If we
Right, right.
land bank 35, we've protected the district, or protected future boards to make a decision. Um, And we're taking advantage of what I think is it's at the right price.
So a future board could still decide if they want to do K-8, elementary, or middle.
Correct.
They could do either of those.
Could there potentially be a high school though, Kelly? Because Lake Mineola is at capacity, we're building an addition, so even though I feel like we talk about it being right around the corner, and I realize that, but it reminds me of Mineola and Grassy Lake, like they're so close together.
Right.
Because of you said this is a developer that wants to buy it, so there's gonna be homes and students, and would there be capacity for another high school for a future board to consider?
Right, well, the property was originally purchased, it was supposed to be the site for Lake Mineola High School, and then we weren't able to get the zoning on it, because of the road network.
So we weren't able to use it.
Yeah,
It was bought originally to be Lake Mineola High School.
So we should
But then we couldn't use
That
it.
was a huge-
but then we couldn't, right, we couldn't use it. You know, so, could I see putting another high school in that area? If the board was desperate at some point. You know, we will need another high school to serve basically that area of North Groveland, all along that. You know, we still have Sugarloaf Mountain, there's the hills of Mineola, Lake Mineola, besides our 400 student thing. But honestly, that would be really long-term, and I really think it would be as much of a, you know, we're really desperate for a high school site as anything. What I could see happening is the need for a middle school. Right now, East Ridge Middle serves Mineola, which, you know, also doesn't make necessarily a lot of sense as a locational thing. And it turned out when I was doing some of the research, the reason that we've ended up buying the 112 acres entirely is because they were gonna build both a middle school and a high school on this site. And then we couldn't put either of them on there, and so East Ridge went where it did, and Lake Mineola went where it did. So, you know, I could see a K-8, I could see a middle school, either one on the site. I do think that if nothing else, we should hold out at a minimum of 35 acres.
Okay. I just
They've
have-
agreed to a minimum of 35?
Yes. No, not a minimum. The conversations we've had has been 35 acres.
Just two things I want to make sure I'm clear on. The proceeds from this sale would have to be returned to the impact fee fund, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So that limits the use of the money, okay? And the second thing, do we feel fairly comfortable that if we retain this property, we can obtain the zoning requirements to build a school? Because it sounds like before we couldn't get zoning to build any school.
That was in the county. We would be annexing it into the city
So
of
we-
Mineola, and I think they would.
We'd be okay.
They would work with us. Yeah, I think the harder thing, honestly, would be determining where we want to put our school. The offer from Richland basically said that we would have the option of reserving 35 acres in the southwest corner. I don't know that that's the optimal location for
On
a
a
school.
hill. Okay.
So,
On the hill for East Ridge and Pitt.
yeah, so I think that would probably be the
Nice
more
of them
difficult.
to give us the worst part of our land.
It'd make a nice coliseum in the center.
We could have an amphitheater. It'd be lovely. So I think we'd have that discussion with anybody that we worked with. And, you know, and personally, I do think that if we put it on the market, that we, you know, let it be known that it's on the market and see if there are other offers.
But when is this, they sent a letter though, right? In 10th?
They did, but because the property is not for sale, we can't accept that letter of intent. So basically, the next steps, if the board wants to move forward with selling it, would be to do a resolution. and have that on the board agenda, I'm assuming for the 22nd. And basically that would say that, the board has found 60, all but 35 acres of it surplus and wishes to dispose of it. We can write that, however we want, in whatever method we want to sell it, if it's just public sale or public sale, I think, is basically like an auction. We don't want to necessarily do that. But basically that, it's going to be out for sale. And then we would also need to do an educational spot survey, and that would just be on the same agenda. I don't see any reason that DOE would not approve that. But basically, once the board says it's for sale, then we can go ahead and move forward with negotiations. We would have to amend anything with any offers, or negotiate any offers that we wanted to do.
Would you define on-the-spot survey? I'm sorry, I don't know what
I'm
that
sorry.
means.
So all of our property is, in order to dispose of any property or to repurpose property for a different use, we have our educational plant survey that is approved by DOE, and we do that every 5 years, the base educational plant survey. And then if we do any changes during that 5-year period, then we would do an educational plant spot survey, which basically is, a particular piece of property. And so that's what it is. It's basically just a submittal. And that comes back before the board, and then I submit it to DOE, and DOE approves it, or doesn't.
Okay, so, were you done?
No, I was just thinking.
Thank you. Am I right that multiplies out to 5.7 million?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
and then what was the question about, she brought up the impact fee. I didn't know that. Can you clarify a little more? Like, will that 5.7 go, it goes into our impact fee pile of money so that we can only use it on new construction?
Yeah, so
Why is that?
because we purchased it with impact fees.
Got it.
So we purchased it with impact fees back in 2006, and so basically, if we know the source of those funds, it has to go back into that source of funds. So
It's a
this would
good
go
return
back
on
into the
investment.
impact fees. Now,
I support this. I think this is a good plan.
All right.
Anyone else?
Any-
So with that, you would draw up what portion is the part we would retain when we do our resolution, or is that come out there?
No, that would probably come, it would basically just be a resolution that says that we're gonna retain 35 acres on the remainder, because then once we had, so the next steps after that was once we had an agreed upon deal with a developer, whether it's Richland, whether it's somebody else, then basically we would work with them to develop a land use plan that says, here's what's remaining, here's what portion would go to the city for their water treatment plant, and here's what, the district would retain. We've had some early discussions with the city of Mineola about how we would go through that process. The annexation's pretty clear. The rezoning and the comprehensive plan amendment become a little bit more complicated, but basically that would come back to the board as a submittal to the city once we've got that finalized. It would basically show you what portion we're planning on keeping and how the rest of that would go to.
It was sort of my understanding that we would be the ones submitting for the change in the rezoning.
Yes,
So that the
as
first
the
step
property
kind
owner,
of
we
is
would do
with the
that.
city of Mineola and establishing what that looks like, because it only has the value when it's zoned.
Right, and that's the way, so the letter of intent and probably any contract that we did would basically say that, that the final sale would only take place once that rezoning and annexation had taken place. So we do it, but we can't necessarily do rezoning and a comp plan amendment except in conjunction with a partner, whoever we're gonna sell it to.
But the fact that it's almost like which comes first, the chicken or the egg. that the value of the property is the fact that it is part of Mineola.
Right, right.
And the land, 10 acres or less, I'm gonna go the other way, 10 or less acres, that would be defined as part of this rezoning, because Mineola's, what they're gonna gain is that land
Right.
or the consideration of what they're gonna do. And regardless, I think we've established that it increases the value tremendously. So without even a sale, we can't go ahead and,
We could annex, and we could theoretically rezone it, but we wouldn't know. So basically, once you rezone it, think of it as a puzzle. So you have this big square, and you need to carve it up into pieces. And you're gonna say, okay, this portion is gonna be residential, this portion is gonna be institutional, this portion is gonna be institutional for the water treatment plant. But you need to know, you need to be, really, it's gonna be much more efficient. We could do that all by ourselves, but that doesn't necessarily mean that any seller or any buyer in the end is gonna agree with our
but then they
design.
would just have to go back and rezone. So the idea, what I understood to be accurate, is there's an R1, 2, or 3. That if we went with an R2, all these have to do with density of the houses. And so if we went in with what the city of Mineola is gonna vote for, then the developer, that's one more additional leg, which adds value, because they know straight away what they're gonna be able to do with the property. Now, the developer suggested we do R3, and you can always fall back, that's denser.
There's more
Or
fight for
we,
density.
or I'm more inclined to do it what's practical, into the city is going to buy into. But having that in place, again, brings value, because if we just get it, if we get them up to the point of them doing rezoning, then that diminishes the value, because now that it's already defined as R1 or 2 or 3, right?
So
That's
can-
just the conversation I had.
I guess,
If it's
can we
wrong,
plat it?
then-
Is this like a platting process, what
No,
you're
no, no,
describing?
You're just defining the property.
Okay.
You're not there yet.
Oh, okay.
Right, but you do actually have to have a land use plan that says which portion of the property is gonna be each
Right.
type of zoning. And so it's easier to do that when you're working in conjunction with the end user of the land. So basically, if you do the resolution, you say that you're gonna sell it. Then you get your offers in and you decide who you wanna move forward with. Then you sign a contract with them that says that it is contingent upon a agreed-upon rezoning, annexation, and comp plan amendment. And that's actually how the letter of intent from Richland is
Right.
written. And then basically during that period, that's our due diligence, or their due diligence period, really, is we are working with them to develop the land use plan, do the annexation application, go through the process with the city of Mineola, and it actually goes to the state as part of the comprehensive plan amendment. And then, once all that is done, you have a rezoned piece of land that everybody has agreed upon, and then you close on that property and you sell the residential portion of that land
But
and
the-
donate the
But
others.
again, the key to its value is the city of Mineola annexing.
Right,
And why couldn't we annex that piece of property ahead of, with a contract from a developer or without one? Because the value is it being rezoned, or being annexed.
you could certainly annex with or without. If you annex with a contract with the developer, then you just go through with the rezoning and do the process like I just described. If you do it without a contract with the developer, you can do the annexation. It just becomes harder to do the rezoning and the comp plan amendment, because you don't know which physical portion of the development or of the property that you want annexed in each thing. So basically, we could go through and we could break it up ourselves and say, this is what we wanna keep, we're gonna zone that as institutional, we're gonna sell this portion as residential, and then we're gonna give this piece to the city of Mineola for their water treatment plant. But we don't necessarily know that a developer or our future buyer doesn't have a better idea. And then we could end up having to redo it all again.
I think his
We
question,
would have to redo it again, or they would then do it?
Well, so our property is involved. So if we end up shifting boundary lines or anything like that, then we would be involved in that process of having to redo it all again.
Okay.
So if we go through an annexation process with Richland, is that a commitment to sell to them?
It sounds like.
That's what it is.
So-
See, that's the,
That's a
That's the
commitment.
conundrum.
So we couldn't consider any better offers?
So we wouldn't necessarily go through the annexation process until we had a commitment with them or somebody else. So you could accept deals, tell them that this is what our intention is, and then, decide who you want to work with, whose offer you want to accept, and then go through the process with that developer.
Okay. So you need to know that that's the person when you go through the process.
You
it would
can,
just be more efficient.
it'd
right,
be
Kelly?
more efficient.
Okay, so we wouldn't have to redo it over again. If we,
Yes.
that's what I think she's trying to
Unless
say.
they decide they don't want their piece of the property to be the piece that the other company wanted, correct? Then you'd have to redo it, or someone would. Like you were saying before, if, they want a different portion of the land.
but it seems like we're gonna drive the train on.
I
the o-
think
the
we
only
should
thing-
drive the train.
The only thing that we're driving the train because we wanna decide where we want the school.
That's what I was thinking, if they don't agree
Yeah.
with
And
it.
then,
Right.
and then logically, that whole drain field, like running along where the interstate is, makes sense to me. So just like you said, carve that little piece out. And so we were defining, because it's our property.
Right.
Yeah, I agree.
Right.
Like, and then we present the parcel to the buyer.
Right.
So I think I understand what you're saying, Mr. Mathias. I think that there are reasons to do it in conjunction with a buyer.
Okay.
And that is basically so that you have, if we do it and we break it up right now, we have to say that we're gonna have to be on a frontage, right? So you're gonna have to be right on the road, because otherwise you can't guarantee that there's access. If you're doing it in conjunction with a buyer and they know what their land use plan is and we know what our land use plan is, then there's possibilities that you could do it slightly offset. There's an access road that they're gonna build and we get a better access point, so that then, they know where their roads are, what their land use plan is as they go through. And we can better control where our site is, how it works with their development, and how it works with their access.
I sort of drove us off the topic a little bit by getting too deep, because we haven't even decided we're gonna sell it. So I think that's
True.
that's the first thing, and then I would acquiesce to you over this pot and pan settlement on what's the best approach. Does that seem reasonable?
Is it, if it's not the current buyer, can we advertise at the higher selling price, the parcel, without having it zoned? Like, how do we advertise it, I guess? How do you look for, is it Reimer? How do you, who?
Ridgeland.
Ridgeland. Okay, I'll write it down.
Oh, the company.
So if it's not Ridgeland, how do we advertise for somebody else going, we would like to sell part of this piece of land, but we're not sure what part? Would you like to help us pick it, but pay more? Like, how do you do that?
You worded it just like that.
I think you basically say that, we are planning to offer up, whatever the remainder is after, 109 minus approximately 72 acres.
I mean, I've never sold commercial real estate,
But
so.
when you get into this level and this amount of money, it's not like people are gonna be sitting by their phones ready to call in. I mean, it's
Yeah,
becoming very
there's-
specific. As it so happens, this Ridgeland has the parcel like directly across from there. So it's kind of a natural, they're gonna develop an entire area.
Okay.
And so that's more valuable in my mind to them than it might be.
Right.
Sure, I think there's gonna be very limited people who are gonna be willing and able to take this on. And they are very sophisticated developers, so they understand exactly this negotiation and this kind of, it's a little bit of a dance that you have as you go through this process.
But I have found they were very straightforward. I think that I judge on a handshake and a read in the negotiations. They've been to the district. It's been honorable, I'll say that.
This is Richland.
Richland, yeah. They came in, they're the ones that came
Right,
initially
with
with
the offer.
65.
Yeah.
That I had a discussion, just full transparency, with Mark Johnson, the city manager, and he said 65 was fair, based on the situation. Then when Mr. Johnson and I were discussing the fact that they need that land, et cetera, they would annex in this property, that Richland came back with what exactly Randall had said that the land was worth. And so, without any games, and I enjoy that, quite honestly.
I agree.
Kelly, I do just want to mention on the next meeting, when you bring the resolution, are you also going to have one for the DOT disposal?
Right, that's a much straighter, it's basically just the donation letter or the agreement. And at that point, you know, if the board's willing to go forward, we may just have the quitclaim deeds. So basically, that would just be one package. And then this would be
What about the
probably a separate.
Mineola agreement? The agreement with the city of Mineola, does that come at the same time?
The,
You need to
The 10
declare,
acres.
you have to declare the,
right, you have to declare it
declare it
surplus.
first.
Yeah, you have to do that first,
Right.
then right behind it, you do,
So I don't know that you, so
I don't know there's
basically.
a rush, I'm just saying.
Right, but I think with Mineola, if you could find yourself in, having donated the land with no other agreement.
No, I'm
So-
talking about the whole agreement, no, I'm not just saying, to do it, we have the agreement in place.
The agreement,
If we donate the land, they're going to annex the property, just an MOU, is that possible?
we can talk to them, I'm not sure how exactly that would work, but we could
I
certainly
think that's a good idea.
figure out, if that would be, if there are any pitfalls to that, or if we wanna go ahead and move forward that way.
Perfect, okay.
So, just real briefly, I'm like looking at Google Maps. There's, even if, like, it is turnpike frontage, but the turnpike gets off at Hancock, there's not gonna be a turnpike exit there, right?
No.
So that frontage isn't as important as like the roads around it.
Exactly.
Right,
Okay. Okay. So we would probably get access roads from the roads around, like Scrub Jay and Sullivan and Seminole. Is that a trail?
Seminole is I believe an unpaved.
Yeah, I don't
road.
think it's a real road.
Yeah, it's not really, it just goes to somebody's property up there. So really, our access would be off of Sullivan and Scrub Jay, and then any roads that a developer may build through the property.
Okay. That makes sense. All right.
Okay, are there any other questions? I think
Did you
that's
just
all I
give us
have.
this for what reason?
Just so that you had an updated copy of it.
Are there any other parcels that, I mean, if we have surplus land,
Yeah, there are.
do we have to vote every time on
Let me-
surplus? I just didn't vote on this list.
No, you have actually already, the properties that you do want to sell, yeah, the properties that you have decided that you want to sell, except for Scrub Jay, basically you have already done a resolution that says, it was August 29th of 2019, that says that you are going to sell those. And I think,
Oh, I see it now.
you know, we were going to, 2020 just kind of threw us off of actively marketing those, but we do need to go ahead and
And
actively
we had
market them.
decided, because we got such little play from the local realtors, that we were gonna do our own. like,
Yes, right, and pretty much right after that, you know,
Exactly right.
pandemic and hopefully, but we are moving out of that, so we're gonna go ahead and at least throw up some signs, and we'll go ahead and send some information out to the local realtors and say, if you have anybody, you know,
But we would
please
have our own
bring
like,
us
real estate
offers.
sign that show, a real estate sign, so that would be, right?
We can do that, yeah.
And that will, Mr. Parser, isn't that what we said? That because we didn't get any play, that we could market our property ourselves? Sure.
We can do a Google site through the website.
I'd love to, yes,
Okay,
I'd love some of this. And we're gonna need cash more than ever, I think.
okay. I will make a that's actually a great idea. So we will do that, and I will remind you that they do have those oil and mineral rights issues, so
This property does also?
a lot of the properties do, yeah.
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 So is that because of the laws changing over the years? The oil and mineral rights thing?
It was a pretty standard thing that people used to maintain oil and mineral rights. You
There were
know.
reservations in the deeds, so when the land was deeded originally, the sellers said they retained any oil and mineral rights, and again, that was very common practice.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Is it common practice now to have to go out of them every contract that you get? You think we'd be becoming more efficient at it, but it,
Well, because the process is
Right.
that the process doesn't really change, it's just sometimes difficult finding heirs to give up those deeds,
Right.
so
And
as time goes
statutorily,
on.
yeah, statutorily, we still, if we sold property without some kind of release of oil and mineral rights, you'll notice whenever we do one now, we have you approve a release of oil and mineral rights so that it doesn't become an issue for somebody else way down the
20 years from
line.
now, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, all right, that is all I had, so thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Put my mask on.
Okay, we're gonna get Mr. Ward.
Okay, just before he begins, I just want to thank Ms. Crennan for being here today. If you'll recall, at the last meeting, she had brought up a question in regards to the move to the $15 an hour minimum wage increase. And I know she had talked to many of you, and she and I had a chance to talk, and so I thought it was timely that we give you an update on that and the conversations that have taken place thus far as we move towards making sure that we're in compliance. And so I asked Mr. Ward to give us an update and give you the timeline for that.
Sure. Good morning, everybody. Just real quick, won't take long at all. Florida's minimum wage. As most of us are aware, Florida's amended their constitution on November 2020 general election. That amendment will increase the minimum wage for employees to $10 per hour beginning September 30th, 2021. And then each year it'll go up $1 an hour until it gets to $15 an hour in 2026 for the 2026-2027 school year or fiscal year. And then after that, it will be set to automatically increase based on the Consumer Price Index for urban wage earners and clerical workers. Florida legislation is still working on drafting their agreement to this, so I don't think there's much they can change. I think they're going to make some changes maybe to how it's applied to certain types of workers, but I don't think any of our employees will fit in that type of work. And again, our current minimum wage is $8.65, which did change effective January 1, 2021. So the reason why I wanted to go over that is I think some people understood this as it was going to go to $15 an hour immediately, and that's not the case. It's going to be phased in over time. So because of that phase-in, it'll start impacting more and more employees each year as it increases. And because of that, the cumulative effect, as you can see on this screen, it starts to get larger and larger as it goes. So this is a cumulative effect. So for 2021-22, remember this is not a full academic year. It starts in September. So for the first couple of months, it'll be the lower rate. And then after September 30th, it'll increase. The impact of the general fund for 21-22 is $140,000. Food service would be $15,500. Other federal, $4,000. And then our ELC program, which is in a separate fund, would be a little over $10,000. And then as it goes up each year, you can see the increase. So from 2022-23 to today, it would be a $485,000 increase for the general fund. For 23-24, compared to today, it would be $1,185,000. And then you can see 24-25, $2.2 million, $2.3 million. 25-26 will be $3.7 million. And then 26-27, it'll be $5.5 million over today. So you can see that it is going to have an impact on us down the road. Not an immediate impact, but it is going to cost us money down the road. As the group of people gets larger and larger each year, not only is it going up $1, but a lot more people are getting the additional $1, and that's what causes it to jump up later on.
What do you mean a lot more people are getting the
Well,
additional?
the people that are making $13 an hour today, this wouldn't
Oh, okay.
impact
I've
them
got you.
because, but at some point in time, they will fall into that impact.
Right,
and it'll-
that makes sense.
This does not include the impact of substitute pay or any other compensation based on daily rates. We have some agreed upon rates that are paid based on the day that they work, like a substitute. And as these daily rates, our day's a 7.5 hour day, so as that goes below the $10 an hour or $11, $12, $13 an hour, it'll have an impact on them. So I showed what would happen for the minimum wage for substitute teachers. You can see currently it's $65 for a high school diploma, $75 for associate's degree, $85 for a bachelor's degree, and then $95 for a current certified teacher. 2021, the high school diploma would have to go up to $75 an hour. The rest of them would not have to go up. They wouldn't be required to go up because of minimum wage. And you can see 22, 23, the high school and the associates goes up to $82.50. 23, 24, high school associates and bachelors all go up to $90. And then after that, all of them go to $97.50, then $105, and then $112.50 and $26, $27. And then substitute food service assistants, clerical assistants, teacher assistants, custodian and bus driver assistants, they all currently are paid based on the minimum wage hour. So as these substitutes each year, as the minimum wage goes up, all of these hourly rates will go up with them. So, and there's no real way to estimate that other than look at a full year's worth of information. And we just didn't have any recent full years of information to look at.
When's the last time we looked at the substitute teacher pay?
I'd have to defer that to Mr. Farnsworth and see if he can answer that.
It's something we're always looking at different ways, as you know, substitutes being an issue. It's something that has been an ongoing discussion in the background. We have not pulled the trigger on that. For one, the main reason being, as talking to other districts across the state, those that have increased the pay of substitute teachers, hoping it would impact, it's had zero impact on increasing substitutes being willing to work. And those are dollars that come out of the general fund that would be given to at-will employees rather than ones that are contracted with us. So it's something that we've definitely entertained and looked at, and, you know, that needs to be addressed, but for the sake of it being a recruiting purpose to attract more substitutes, that's not where we have dedicated our focus, especially in financial, you know, uncertainty.
The area that only looks woefully low is current certified teachers. I mean, it seems like the best substitute would be someone who's been a teacher before, right?
And a lot of times, those that come in, it's usually folks that have had a lag on getting their paperwork done, or there's something that's holding them up, so it's very brief that they would remain on that pay scale, and we try to get them into the classroom as soon as possible as a certified teacher.
Oh, I thought this was like a retired teacher coming back to substitute.
As much as you think there's a lot of those hanging around, there's not many of those that do participate. But I agree, for the ones that do, if we could do more for them, that'd be great.
When's the last time we raised, I mean, obviously we'll raise rates in 3-4 years, but when's the last time? Because I swear my mom subbed for $100 a day,
I don't think it's been.
like
raised
20
in-
years
I
ago.
don't think it was raised in the 8 years I've been on the board.
It's been a while. I tried to trace it back and could not find evidence of where it was raised. Maybe I didn't turn over the correct stone, but I did not see anywhere. But is your mom a retired teacher?
Yeah, but I'm talking about when she substituted, when I was a freaking kid. It was like $100 a day.
Yeah, I'm not,
Maybe it wasn't,
I don't
but,
think that would be the case, but I don't want to misspeak. I'm not sure.
yeah, I just
know
wonder.
I honestly
Orange-
do not think it's increased in the 8 years I've been on the board.
I would say you're probably accurate on that.
But you heard him say why. I mean, I think it's important to consider.
Well, it's not, I'm not looking at it as necessarily as much recruiting. And I do think that, like in the high school area, these seem to be fair numbers to me, other than when you get down to current certified teacher.
Right, being the same as a high school diploma.
be the same, but it's a few dollars more, but obviously the skill sets are different that
Right.
you're bringing to the table.
Sure.
And at a time when substitutes, I would think, have been really important when it comes to the COVID and stuff, right? That we're just paying them fair, that's all. That's all, that's my thought behind it.
Is our range in range of the counties around us?
Yeah, it's pretty comparable to what everybody else does. There's different ways. Some of them have just one flat rate. Some of them tier it out like we do. There's a couple different methods that I go by. Usually you do have some type of difference if they hold some type of degree. You'll have a non-degree other than high school versus some type of post-secondary education degree.
What,
I know.
what class can someone with just a high school diploma teach?
Any.
That they can't class, they can't really teach it, but they can facilitate lesson plans that are level.
What does he want?
I think he wants more.
if Chad's gonna continue to speak, he wanted to go to the microphone.
Oh,
It's not being recorded and captured well for.
Oh, what Chad said was. I think we're done.
I know, I can tell you guys in Orange County, because whenever I was attending UCF in my bachelor's program, so I'm talking 1999, 2000, we got paid $100 a day for a Title I school. So if we went to a school that was known to be high needs and had trouble getting substitutes, then it was $100 a day, but it was because of what?
I'm on board for that.
So that, I remember that because in your junior internship, you have some days, like a Friday, so I would pick up schools that were $100 a day, and that was 20 years ago. Not to age myself. I was in college when I was 10.
Child prodigy.
But I was able to, I will tell you, I substituted driver's education in high school. I biology, like, it didn't matter what my degree was in. And I just had the high school diploma at that point, and I could sub anywhere.
Okay. All right, Mr. Ward, back to you.
That's all for my presentation today.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you go back to the impact? Just have it on screen while Mrs. Cunningham.
Well, my question is probably just only of interest to me, but on the first slide that you showed, the other federal, give me an example of what kind of employee that is.
For the other federal, I believe mainly would be like our TAs that are paid for
Like
out of the
ESC,
ESC and
Title
Title
I,
I.
okay.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thanks.
So I guess my observation is, in reality, this may be the impact if we were to follow the minimum wage exactly, but I guess one thing we have to talk about through some sort of bargaining executive session as, well, somebody comes in now at $10 an hour, people who have been here longer, they're making $10.04, you know?
That's exactly what was on my mind. So is this just moving?
This is
the
just
bar?
meeting, this is
Move
just
on.
moving to the
So then
minimum
we're
requirement.
right back in the same situation.
Yes, sir.
So somebody who has been making 10 isn't reflected in this number.
That is true.
You
Yeah,
can't- well,
and-
This is terrible.
So this happened to our teachers, right?
Imagine, it seems
Yeah.
like we just lived through that, right?
Here it is again.
With a
The
different group.
the people that are at the minimum wage today are going to see a substantial increase in the next 5 to 6 years. And the district could, in no way could afford to keep everybody at that same percentage increase. It's just too much of a jump.
I don't know how we're gonna
But it
afford
also
to do
isn't
that.
reasonable that if the person is at $10 now, that you're gonna expect that it can just be lateral, he's gonna stay at 10.
I agree
That's
with
not
you.
reasonable.
I agree with you.
So there's got to be some budgeting to bump them. I don't even know what's a fair amount, but whatever.
I agree. And this, I don't think anybody's saying this has taken over the bargaining process for all other employees. This is just to meet the mandate at the minimum.
Right. But realistically, we need to, if we're gonna do any kind of strategic planning.
Sure.
And see where we're gonna cut, then there should be at least some amount applied, so we have a more realistic number.
Sure.
That we're looking at. Right?
Sure.
So if it meant 2%, you know what I mean? Y'all can, I'm
Yes,
not trying to bargain for you. But this number is bad, but I suspect it's going to be worse, like a lot worse, right?
Yes, if you look at the percentage of increase from the $8.86 to the $10, that's a big jump for a small few number of people. So yeah, I don't think the district can afford to give the same percentage for everybody, But I think, yes, I agree completely that we have to take care of all employees and not just those that are
I mean, we already
mandated.
went through it, and it was terrible.
Yes, sir.
And so we're right back now with, we're talking about the folks that are the engines keeping everything running.
Yes, sir.
And it'd be nice to have an idea of what that would look like, some percentage, you pick it out of your mind, or between you and Mrs. Cronin, or I don't even know how this works. Anyway, I'd like to know what that number kind of looks like.
Sure.
And then more important than that is, where is it gonna come from? Where do you see us finding the dollars,
Correct.
right?
So, I mean, isn't this sort of
Is that something you
to,
can do, by the way, or is that?
As far as coming up
Like
with.
almost an actuary, like you're gonna try and anticipate where we're gonna be with revenue and.
Right. Well, of course, the big gorilla in the room is what's the legislature's going to do this year.
That's right. That's exactly what I was gonna ask. Like, are we gonna anticipate that they're gonna increase the FPFP so that we can fund this?
This is where this process gets frustrating for me, because, okay, we know that this is something we wanna do, right? And you gotta bargain this process, no doubt. But then, when we go back into one of our executive sessions, then we can't talk about where to cut the money in order to pay for that.
Right.
And so, we find ourselves constantly in this circle chasing around, because we can't have that conversation at the same time. We gotta be able to have the bargaining conversation at the same time we're talking about how to pay for it. It's the legal world I don't like.
Well, not for anything, but I will throw out that if there was equity in pursuit of funding.
That's right.
That's $12 million, and we gonna give all of our employees, we go right to 2026.
Yes. Okay. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Lots of questions. It's just a matter of answers.
Yeah. Okay, we're gonna take a 5-minute break, all right? Okay, welcome, Mr. Mock.
Thank you.
And we're going to have you give us your maintenance operation audit fiscal year 2020, 2021.
Yes.
All you.
Thank you, school board. This was presented to audit committee last week. We also had another audit that was also presented at the audit committee meeting for the construction contract review. Unfortunately, Mr. Broline wasn't able to make time today, so we'll have to schedule that for the next workshop. Okay?
But I
So-
heard it went outstanding. I heard from my audit appointee it went really
Thank you.
well.
That's great.
And everyone's now attending, correct?
Yes.
Good.
And we have a new one, right? Soon. Okay. Okay, this was the presentation I gave on the maintenance operational audit report. As the school board remember, when I first came on board back in 2014, this was the first audit I completed for the school district. And in that audit, I made a lot of recommendations for improvements to the maintenance department. At that time, there was different management in place, actually for a couple of years prior to our new management that is there today. So a little bit happened after the audit, but a lot more has taken place since then. How's that, under the new management, is probably a good way to put it. So this audit, I'll go over the outline here. I kept everything that I looked at the same. I looked at the work orders, I looked at the parts inventory, I looked at the procurement of parts, I looked at the energy management, and I looked at the white fleet. That was the same areas that I looked at in the audit roughly 5-6 years ago. Next slide, please. Work orders. This time I noted 3 major areas of improvement. One of them they were implementing, if you remember a couple years back, they were trying to implement iPads to replace the paper work orders. And the idea of trying to go paperless was to improve that overall process. When you go in generating work orders, there's thousands of work orders today all over the place. And in that time they were in paper. And to accomplish the processes, notes would be written on the work orders. They'd be passed around to accomplish the work, and then eventually the work order would end up back in the office. All those notes would have to be entered in the system. And I think if you remember, I told you there's about 3 weeks worth of work orders that had to be completed and closed out because it just took a lot of time to go through that process. The idea was to go to iPads. They never were able to complete that process, but today what they've done is they've used Chromebooks. And now all the technicians have Chromebooks. We're completely paperless. All the work orders are entered in electronically, so there's no potential loss of those notes if a work order gets lost. But there's also that process at the end that gets taken away where the person in the office doesn't have to enter all those notes off the paper work orders. So we're saving, not printing paper, we're saving ink, we're saving the whole process of not passing those from person to person and the time that all takes. So it's driven a lot of efficiency in the process. And then the second area is, which is another big area that they were able to accomplish, is the reorganization of the technician job description. And by being able to do that, they were able to consolidate a lot of the job responsibilities. If you can remember back, they had a lot of jobs where like painter, where the painters would be painters. That's what they would do. They didn't do any other of the other jobs that could be done on work orders. They just did the painting jobs. So, and I think I might have pointed that out as I printed out and all the work orders by types, and I categorized them and found out, it seemed like we had a certain number of painters, but then you looked at the total number of work orders, just didn't seem to compare. So they took that and they ran with changing the job descriptions and consolidating the job responsibilities, and that created a lot of efficiency and effectiveness in how they assign the work orders, and in turn they were able to reduce the number of technicians that they needed in their staff. Final area that was also a result of that is by becoming more efficient and effective, is they were outsourcing some of the job responsibilities, and in turn they were able to bring some of that back in-house. So all in all, if you look at this through, and this number down here that I have, the 621,000, that includes some of this savings in paper and printing, but the major part of it is coming through the reduction in technicians, which is about 630,000, or excuse me, 600 and, when you're thinking off the top of your head, that doesn't work, does it? It's about $610,000. So the rest of that money is through the paperless work efficiencies, which is kind of intangible, but you can see that there is savings there too. So I've just to remind you, in the reports I did update the flow maps in all these processes, so you can see what the current processes look like. Next slide for the parts inventory. I think this is a tremendous amount of improvement in the parts inventory. Big part of that is intangible. If you remember, when I did my calculations, I would do calculations on the carrying costs of inventory. This kind of fits in with my background where I spent 24 years in wholesale distribution. So I was able to do a lot of calculations that we used to do back when I was with Hughes Supply. But back in the 2014, 2015, when I looked at your parts inventory here at the school district, you only had about 463 parts that were moving on a regular basis, so which was equaled out to about 23.6% of the inventory. So you weren't moving a lot of your inventories on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. But today, when I did this review based off of November 2020 inventory, and now you're moving 1,137 stock keeping units on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, which is about 52.2% of the inventory. Still below where you need to be, but I mean, it takes a lot of work to change a parts inventory and turn it around, especially when you don't have the capabilities that a business has to work with vendors and return parts and replace them with parts that are moving on a more regular or used on a more regular basis. You can't get credit for parts. So in turn, you got the school district has to either use those parts up and not replace them, or just zero them out and potentially just throw them away, basically. And we don't want to throw away potential parts that are good and could be used in some of our older schools. And that becomes part of the issue as well. You have a lot of older schools, and some of the parts relate to those older schools, and you want to keep them around. So the second part here is I looked at your non-moving and slow-moving items. Back in 2014, 2015, you had about $338, almost $339,000, or 75% of the inventory was actually non-moving or slow-moving. Today, when I looked at it in November last year, that had improved quite significantly. The number reduced down to 196,000, and it was only about 40% of your inventory that overall was not moving. So you've done a tremendous amount of getting these items out of your inventory, and then obviously replacing with items that were moving. And that's a big part of the intangible, is now you become more of a relevant inventory, right, of parts, because now you can actually go to the warehouse and get parts that you need, versus when I first was here, I mean, probably needed a part, you only had about a 24% chance that it was in the warehouse. You probably had to go out somewhere else and get it. Today you have about a 50% chance that those parts are going to be there. So I'd like to see that get up to 80%. That's my view. It'll probably take a few more years to get there, but that's my hope that they can accomplish that. Number 3 here is something I think that's going to help tremendously, and it's something that I talked with them about back in 2014, 2015, was putting in the barcode system. I think it's going to help in keeping your inventory accurate, relevant, and up to date. It's going to be a lot easier to receive things in, put them away, and be able to go out and pick them out of your inventory. The other thing that it's going to do, it's also going to help modernize the physical inventory. I always reflect back when I first came on board, it took a month for the school district to do an inventory. They would actually shut the warehouse down for a whole month of June, I think, June. Well, no, it would close at the end of June, and it would be closed pretty much the month of July while they took inventory. Today, it's only closed for about 2 weeks, so we've cut that in half. I think if you go to a barcode cycle counting system, there's no need to close it down probably for more than 2 days. And the reason behind that is you'll be continuously cycle counting items throughout the year, and when you really come up to the inventory, you probably only need to cycle count those items that move on a fairly rapid basis. So I call them A items. They're moving, and your slow-moving items are probably going to be accurate. You probably won't have to count them, so you only need a couple days to do that. Next slide, parts procurement. Back in 2014, 2015, I noticed that they didn't have many blanket purchase orders, so in turn, when they needed a part, they had to go out and procure each and every part versus having a whole blanket of parts set up for plumbing or electrical or HVAC with a vendor. And I felt that, or I knew that they would gain a lot of efficiencies by increasing the number of blanket purchase orders. Today they have 38 purchase orders, which is about an 86% increase, and they are able to procure parts a lot easier through local vendors, Ace, Home Depot, Lowe's, Hughes Supply, Ferguson, Grainger, places like that, to accomplish that. So they gained a lot of efficiencies here. One of the things that procurement would like to, or actually not would like, is going to change in the purchase order procurement is to get a little bit the bidding process established on the front end, and so that we can award those contracts under state guidelines. So that was one area that they're going to work on. Next slide is energy management. When I first looked at this, in my view, was the most progressive area at maintenance. It still remains progressive today. They continue to look for those cost-saving products to help the school district reduce or maintain the energy usage throughout the school district. They look for areas where they can also cost save in procedures to help, again, reduce our energy consumption costs. One of the things that they're implementing today is they're running tests with a company called Vutu, and it's an energy management system that they're testing in the facilities. This is some hardware that's put on the school electrical grid, and it helps look for where wasted energy is being conducted in that facility. It also looks for rebalancing energy usage to help lower the costs overall. So hopefully, as they continue through with this, this has been proven in other areas to help do those things of rebalancing and finding wasted energy, and overall help us control our costs. Because one of the things we know, at least we've seen in the last 30 to 40 days, is our energy costs are going up, and we're probably going to be facing that next year with our fuel costs going higher and higher if our current projection continues to go forward with the fuel. Next area is the White Fleet. Again, this area again has shown significant improvement over the 2014-2015. When I first looked at it, it was an area where a lot of the fleet was rusted, being held together by, whatever they could to keep them on the road. In many cases, they weren't keeping them on the road, and in turn, the technicians had to buddy up with someone else to go out and do their daily work on work orders. Today, we now have only about, I think back then we had about 50% of the fleet was over 20 years old. Today, about 25% of the fleet is 20-plus years old. I think on the end of January, the school board approved the purchase of some new white fleet vehicles, and some of those white fleet vehicles will also help reduce what you're seeing on this slide, where we have a couple vehicles that are way out there in years, 27 to 30, and then we had two that were in the 26 to 21 year age, and then we still have about 26 vehicles that are still over 15 years old. So in turn, the school board continues to work on helping the maintenance modernize its fleet. And one of the things that when you modernize the fleet, I did some research work to see how more fuel efficient current vehicles are versus ones that are, let's say 10 years old. And the research I did on the internet found out that the vehicles purchased in about the last 5 years are about 21% more fuel efficient than vehicles that are, purchased 10 years ago. Another thing it helps us is on the maintenance. Usually a vehicle in the first, couple of years is fully covered on their parts, so that helps reduce our maintenance on the fleet as well. Another one of the things that happened when we reorganized and reduced our technicians is it helped the school district not purchase 8 vehicles. So by reducing our number of technicians, 8 vehicles, that's kind of a one-time savings, or you could even say it's kind of delaying it to the future, because eventually, as we continue to grow and add more schools, we'll eventually hire back those technicians down the road. But it did save purchase of 8 vehicles currently. So in turn, if you go to the next slide, I'll just kind of summarize everything together. Is by reorganizing the staff, we saved $610,000. If you look at the work orders, just in paper savings and printing, we're saving about, annually we're going to save about $11,500. White fleet, not purchasing vehicles, being more fuel efficient, it's about $361,570, and that's also keeping the fleet. By doing the preventative maintenance and keeping the fleet in service longer, we're able to delay some of those purchasing costs as well. And then all the work we do in energy management, we're saving about $18,000 a year. So total annual savings projected about $1.3 million here to the school district. So, and I have to thank the director of maintenance and Mr. Carr for working with me on this. I wanted to come up with savings numbers that they would stand behind as well. I didn't want to come up with my own numbers, so we worked very hard at coming up with some good conservative numbers that the school board could see and value as far as the hard work that's being done in the maintenance area to save the school district money. Next slide is now, as you know, at the end of each of my audits, I do a post-audit survey. So I sent out the survey to the director of maintenance and Mr. Carr and I believe that the results of the work of the audit is because I collaborated closely with each of them throughout the audit. There was at least a dozen meetings with them to make sure they were abreast of what I was doing. If I had any questions about what I needed to look at or could help, them in their efforts. We sat down and discussed it and included it in the audit in total. So any questions?
I have a question on Vutu,
Vutu? Yeah.
which I
I
really
hope I
want
can
to call
answer.
Voodoo.
And no, it's Vutu,
Vutu.
not voodoo.
It's, I mean, I just pulled it up. I hadn't really heard anything about it. I don't know if John wants to talk about it, or like, where are we testing it? And
Yeah, if you're
we're
gonna go,
already
if you're gonna go
recognizing
too deep into it, you'll need Mr.
we're
Carr.
already getting savings from it. Where are we using it? I just don't know much about it.
Come on up, Mr. Carr.
Because it said we supposedly realized $300,000. And I know that energy management savings can be wonky, but I do believe in energy management savings.
Well, for example, with Vutu, what we decided to do is after we were dealing with other energy companies, like, for example, just keep it brief. And that is working with lights and going with LEDs. If you don't balance, and Tom did allude to this and basically in part of his report, on the phasing process of the three-phase power coming into the building without getting in too deep, basically if that's not evenly distributed, then we still pay at a rate of the highest consumption. So in other words, we might have a light savings of energy consumed by the lights, but at the end game, if it's not overall balanced on our legs, our bill is still basically the same. So with Vutu they come in and then actually look at how the energy is dispersed over the legs on the three-phase and make sure it's properly balanced. And then by transferring some energy from one leg to another leg, in essence, will reduce our overall energy consumption.
Okay.
So that will save money. And so part of that I want to emphasize again, with energy going up, what Calvin and I have established a goal is that as we see energy going up, it's not going to be, we hope, our intent, it's not going to be proportionate to our energy bills going up. So although we're going to try to flatline or it will go up a little, it won't be at the percentage that our energy will go up. So that's good. And
Okay, so
we're
they're really
actually
just
gonna
a
be doing all those things.
measurement. They're a measurement company.
It's a measurement and basically reloading of the circuits for a better way of saying it.
Interesting. Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I really do want to recognize Mr. Wingo when we speak about the change in management, and you've been a big part of working with Mr. Carr, or under Mr. Carr's leadership. So it's appreciated that when these audits are done, they don't just sit up on the shelf, that we're actually taking action. So very positive. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I also want to speak to the level of change that I'm seeing over 3 years. I'm impressed. Well done.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments?
I think it might be appropriate at this time to tell you guys I finally have a new audit appointment. So my audit committee member actually had to step down back in November, and I have been diligently trying to find someone, and I did. So my new audit committee representative will be Tracy Carasquillo. She represents BESH and HAF. So I wanted to officially put that into the record.
Thank you very much. Okay. I lost my agenda. Are we just amended or super? Okay, what is- oh, here we go. No board member comments. I found my agenda. Okay, so this time we'll flip. We'll go, Mrs. Luke.
The only thing that I wanted was to tell you guys Tracy was my appointment, so I'm good.
Oh,
Thank you.
perfect. Okay, now we'll shift back over. Mr. Dahlhead?
I don't have any further comments for today.
Ms. Cunningham?
Nothing.
No, I'm good.
Okay, well, I'll just give you all kind of an update on a topic that is very near and dear to my heart, and it is workforce housing for our school district employees and first responders. This initiative was started by the Lake 100, which is a collective group of businessmen that I belong to. The superintendent is a representative. And under the Education Committee of Lake 100, it has really taken government out of the picture, and let's look at how businesses can partner for the benefit. And 100% of that membership said we need workforce housing for our school employees, for our first responders and nurses, so it's all kind of collective. And the first opportunity is moving forward in Leesburg condominium project of 238 condominiums. There's a second project that's being plotted right now, and that one will have tentatively the name Red Apple Reserve. And so it'll be single-family homes. and it is moving ahead, and this is going to be, I think, a great recruit and retain tool. Some of the surplus properties that you saw on the list are areas that we're looking at where we can partner. That would be our participation. And so this has been going on now 2 years almost. So the key is to have something break ground and positive, and I think we're this close. So that's the only thing I wanted to mention about it.
That's really cool.
So with all that said, meeting adjourned.
Wait,
Whoop, time out. I sucked the gavel back.
Keep that you too, really.
I get so excited. Okay, attorney comments. Oh, I missed that too.
When do we elect a new chair?
I just got so caught up in the moment, I didn't want to.
He is really excited about the workforce housing.
I am.
It really is exciting, and I appreciate his leadership on that. He has really been on it, and it has been 2 years, and it's great to finally see this come to fruition. And they're supposed to be breaking ground soon on these condominiums, and so I've already let Kiana know, and she has maps, and so it'd be great recruiting tool for teachers. So it is very exciting. So thank you for your leadership on that. It's
Thank you,
great.
Superintendent.
I just wanted to mention that we do have a blood drive coming up on March the 12th. So if you want to sign up, it'll be out here in our parking lot for anyone who wants to come and donate blood. And we are waiting. I've been talking with the Department of Health now for the past week. We are very excited that hopefully very soon vaccinations will be available for all of our teachers and others that are in contact within our schools with our students. So we are waiting for the executive order. We thought it'd be out on Friday, so we're anxiously waiting that hopefully we'll see it today or tomorrow, and just know that as soon as we get that executive order and we get the clearance, we are going to jump on it as soon as possible, like within a day or two, hopefully, and get those vaccinations scheduled and get all of our employees that are eligible through that. So we're waiting, and we're ready just as soon as that happens. So that's pretty exciting too.
hold on before we close. Just to people who are wondering, the charter that was on the agenda withdrew. Just, I wanted to clear that up because I did bring it up last week. I thought you guys would mention it. Okay, that's all.
Oh, Jim. Okay, meeting adjourned.